to my studio. Today is a special day. We're starting a new journey. I've decided to start a series of videos called Let's Begin. I want to have many different playlists that start with Let's Begin. Let's Begin showing in art galleries is one that I've been promising some of my followers for many months that I plan on starting this summer. But today we're going to be starting a new one called Let's Begin Painting with Acrylics. My niece lives in another city and she wanted me to help her with a program she's involved with where she needs to do 26 weeks of art instruction. And so I'm going to be working with her. I'm going to create 13 videos. So they each have to be an hour long. So we're going to start from the very beginning of what to do, what to get, how to do it. And today's going to be the first one. We want to do a week where she watches the 1 hour video instruction. And then the next week she does the work that's involved at the end. And then we get together in video conference and we talk about the work that she did and I evaluate it, and then we start the cycle again with another video and then another week of work and another week of evaluation. So sometime over the next 6 months we are going to be exploring painting with acrylic from the very beginning for people who have never picked up a paintbrush and know nothing about painting and nothing about acrylics. So follow along, watch the hour-long tutorial, do the homework. Unfortunately, I can't evaluate anyone else's work, but it would give you a great start on where to begin and where to go in your artful journey. Of course, I have many other videos on this website. Once you create this series on all of the stuff you need as a beginner, you should be able to jump into any other one of my videos. I have real-time tutorials, I have fast-forwarded videos, and of course you can post questions below and I will try to answer them as best as I can. So for now, let's move on, and today is going to be the outline of the course and all of the materials that you need and why you need those materials. So thank you for joining me and my niece Gina on our artful journey. It's always better when you're here. Welcome to class number 1 of Let's Begin Painting with Acrylics. Thank you so much for joining me and my niece Gina on our artful journey. This course is definitely for someone who has never painted before, never picked up a paintbrush, and you need some guidance from the very beginning. That's what we're going to be doing. So this particular 1 hour class is going to be about the outline of the next 12 classes and the materials that you need to go and either get or purchase or borrow to work within this series. Now, there are going to be a few other products that you may need to buy later on down the road, but the products that I'm going to talk about today are the ones that you will be able to use for at least the first 6 classes. I know in my head approximately what the first 6 classes are going to be. I haven't yet decided what the last 6 classes are going to be. So there might be 1 or 2 small purchases afterwards. So this list is mostly all-inclusive, but I reserve the right to add a few things later on. So let's begin at the beginning. I made a list for my niece of products that her and my sister needed to go and get, and the very first thing on the list was paint. Now, I have a video already on this particular website called The Differences Between Paint. It's right here. You can go and look at it. It's going to be a little bit more in depth, but we'll cover some basics here. Now, my sister lives near a Michael's, so I sent her with the list to Michael's, and Michael's carries several different kinds of paint. They carry their own paint, which is Artist Loft. They have an entire series of products for academic or student level. This is a level 1. So this is their brand. I usually use Liquitex Basics, so they're usually right beside each other at the Michael's store. And the Artist Loft comes in different sizes. They come in a 4 ounce. They now come in an 8-ounce. This is not the Artist Loft, but it comes in an 8-ounce. And they also have a few colors in this 16-ounce. You can get the small one in either the Artist Loft or the Liquitex Basics. The Liquitex Basics as well comes in a 4-ounce, an 8-ounce, but I buy it by this. It's a liter, which I think is equal to 32 ounces. This is what I use because I go through so much paint with my pouring. So it doesn't matter what size you get, but you only need a 4-ounce. And you can get either the Artist Loft or the Basics. If you live in the States and you have a Hobby Lobby and you want to use Master's Touch or Amsterdam Standard, you go right ahead and you can use those ones. I know in Australia there is a Chromex colors. There's also something called Riotech. There's TriArt. So any student grade paint is perfectly fine for this course. I don't want you to go and get craft paint. So you don't want to get the folk art paint. You don't want to get the ones that they sell in the little 2-ounce tubes for toll painting. You don't want that. You want a true acrylic paint. All right. So again, doesn't really matter which brand and it doesn't matter which size, although 4-ounce would be good. If you get the really small tubes, you might have to go and get more, but I'm pretty sure that a 4-ounce tube will get you through at least the first 6 classes, if not all 12. All right. So then we have to talk about colors. We are going to learn color mixing. So I want you to get the following 5 colors. I need you to get titanium white. Now, there are different kinds of white. The majority of companies have a titanium white brand. There's also something called zinc white. You don't want zinc white. There's also something called mixing white. You don't want that either. And here's why. The titanium white is very opaque, so it will cover things, and it is meant to be used as a color of paint. You're painting white to make something white. Zinc white and mixing white are used to change the color of a paint. This will really, really pastelize the color. If you add red to this, you're going to get pink. You're not going to have a tone of red. Whereas with the mixing white and the zinc white, if you mixed it with red, it wouldn't really pastelize it as much, but you can't use them for painting white. They are not opaque enough. They're very transparent, funny enough. So just keep that in mind that you want titanium white. All right, so that's the first color, white. Then the second color you need is black, and I use Mars black. This is ivory black. There's also a carbon black that you can get, not from Liquitex Basics, but from another couple of brands. They have something called carbon black. There's also something called lamp black, which is, they're all blacks. Ivory tends to be more of a gray black, whereas Mars black is black black. If you can get carbon black, that's a good one as well if you're using the Amsterdam or the Master's Touch. So I would avoid ivory black and stick with the Mars black or the carbon black. They're very, very intense colors, and when they paint over, you're getting a true crisp black as opposed to a gray black. But I do use ivory black for other things. So you need white, you need black. So the next 3 colors you're going to need are the primary colors. I normally have a color wheel here in the studio, but it is packed for my classes and is off-site. I don't have access to it. So what I did was I went and printed this color wheel from www.watercolorpainting.com. I like this one. It is a simple color wheel. It has the primary, secondary, and tertiary colors that's it. There's no tints, there's no shades, there's no complementary. We're going to start with this. We'll get more complex later on. I'm also going to have a downloadable copy of this for you so that you will be able to make your own color wheel, which will be part of the first class. So the three primary colors are yellow, red, and blue. There are different shades of red, yellow, and blue. There's light, medium, dark, there's lemon yellow, there's sky blue. There's a whole plethora of colors out there, but we need the basic colors so that we can learn color mixing. Now, Liquitex Basics has a primary red, a primary blue, and a primary yellow specifically for this kind of learning where you're going to learn color mixing. However, not all stores carry it, and not all brands carry primary colors like a primary yellow, blue, and red. So if you can't get those, the shades that I want you to get are cadmium red medium, not light, not dark, medium. They also have a cadmium yellow medium, and we're going to use ultramarine blue, which in here looks more like cerulean, but it's actually a fairly dark blue. These are the three that we are going to use to mix. Now, if you can't get these colors, try to go for a bright, medium-toned color. They might be called different things other than cadmium or medium, but what we want is basic red, yellow, and blue so that we can do color mixing. If you have a lemon yellow, you're never going to get a dark orange. Like, it's not intense enough. So we really do want the medium toned paint colors, and those we're going to use for color mixing. Now, that's it for paints. So those are the 5 colors you need: white, black, yellow, blue, red. And that will get us started with color mixing and some color theory. So the next thing we're going to talk about is brushes. There are many different kinds of brushes. Let me zoom in here. These are called synthetic or tack-on brushes. These are the ones I want you to get. Tack-on brushes tend to be white, and they're either called tack-on or synthetic. What you don't want to get is bristle brushes. These have their place. These are really good when you're doing chunky painting where you need to see the brush strokes. However, I find that they can be difficult for true beginners to use. That's not to say that when I went to college, they didn't hand us a bunch and say, learn. However, my niece is young, and I want to make this as easy as possible for her. I also didn't want my sister to have to purchase a bunch of different kinds of brushes, so I decided that these tack-on brushes were a really good place to start. I'm going to open this package and I'm going to show you. This is the 10-piece white synthetic brush set from Michaels with their Artist Loft series, their beginner series. And actually, this one comes with some instructions. So let's go and take a look at that. But first I want to just introduce you to the different brush styles that we have. So this tells you right on the label that they have round. And again, these are quite short and fairly small, and they have them marked right here. So these are round brushes. You can tell because they're round and they come to a point, and they are size 1, 2, and 4. Round brushes, as they get larger, the number gets bigger. Now, there are some brushes from some specialty and high-end brushes when you get into really fine, and they'll could be a 0 or a double 0. They're really, really tiny. So you get 3 round brushes. So then there's also flat brushes. So this one here is a number 2, and this one is a number 8, and it's the same thing. The bigger the number, the bigger the brush. So those are flat brushes. This one is called a glaze or a wash brush. It's also flat, but they have it by the size along here. It's 3/4 for 3/4 inches. Technically, it's a flat brush, but they call it a wash brush, and it's, instead of having a number, it has a size. Then we have some angular brushes, and these ones right here also go by size, inch, 1/2 inch, 5/8 inch. I don't know why they do that. It's just the way it is. So it can be a little bit confusing when people talk about brush sizes, because if you didn't know any better and you were only familiar with these brushes that were done by size, and I told you to go get a 4 round brush, you might not understand that it's a size 4 as opposed to 4 inches. And the same with this, right? Half could be very confusing. So different brushes have a different sizing and naming conventions. Try not to let it confuse you. So these ones are by size. And then these are called filbert brushes. These are really cool brushes. They're not flat. I mean, they are flat, but the edge of it is rounded over. So you can get, these are really good. Like this particular one here is really good for daisies, because you can put it down and pull in and you'll get the edge of the petal, and it'll be rounded instead of flat. So this is a number 2 and a number 4 filbert. Again, the naming and numbering conventions, I know there's reasons for it. I just don't know the reason why different brushes have a size and other brushes have a width. I'm sure there's an answer out there. If you know the answer, put it down in the dibbly-doo for me. So there we go. This is our beginner set that we're going to use. We're going to be using fairly small substrates to be working on. So I didn't want people to have really large brushes on a really small substrate. I think this set is a good little beginning set. I think I paid $5.99 for it, or $6.99 Canadian for it. This is a good place to start. So let's open this up and see what they say. This is the Artist Loft brush guide. I love this. I wasn't expecting it to be included in the package. I like that here they break down the brush, so you have the brush tip. This is the brush tip. This is where the bristles are. The metal part is called the ferrule. And of course the handle is the handle. Let me get a piece of black paper so it's easier to see. There we go. So we'll just cover up this part here so that you can see the difference in these brushes. So that is that wash brush. This is a shader. This is a flat. These are the rounds. This is a shader. This is the filberts. And this is the other flat. Here we go. So I picked this pack for a couple of reasons. One, I picked it because the handles are short. They're easier to hold. There are brushes that have a much longer handle. These brushes are meant to be standing at an easel far back, so it puts a distance between you and the easel. These ones are short handled and they're meant to be used tabletop or right in front of you. So these are perfect because we're going to be working on small pieces on a tabletop. If you have these long brushes, they're perfectly fine.
Sometimes it can make it a little bit harder, but if you already have these, this is good. I also picked this little kit because it was affordable at Michael's and because these brushes, there's a variety of brushes that we can talk about, and we're going to be using on small substrates. So I wanted you to have small brushes. There's no point in having a big honking brush on a piece of paper that's this size. You'll never be able to get detailed work. So that was another reason why I picked it. Synthetic brushes are suitable for painting acrylics and watercolor. You cannot use these brushes with oil paints. We were not going to be using oil paint, so that's not a problem, but I wanted you to know that. So there's the 4 basic shapes. There is the flat brushes, and the shaders are a version of flat brushes. Then there's the rounds, and then there's the filberts. These brushes are called bright brushes because the hair on them is short. So it's meant for short little strokes. Let me get one. See, there's ones that have like really long hairs. And like this as well, they have very long hairs. These have short hairs meant for short strokes. So these are called brights. Don't know why. So it talks about brush care. Clean your brushes promptly with warm water and dish soap. Don't let your paintbrush dry with paint on it. And there's a reason for that, and that's one of the reasons why I have this black paper. If you have paint that gets down in here and it dries, it will spread out your bristles and you won't have the nice flat chisel edge anymore. The paint will eventually build up in here, which can also force some of the hairs out, but it will change the shape of your brush. And that's not very good if you're trying to do a precision stroke, which reminds me, we're going to talk about that, how to hold your paintbrush and what you can do with it. But you want the shape of the brush to stay. There's a reason why these have the shapes that they do. So don't let the paint dry in it. You'll never be able to get it out. Acrylic paint is ground up pigment. In the case of yellow and cadmium red, it's a rock, it's a mineral that they grind up very fine and then they add it to a polymer base. So in acrylic paint, this black has black in it, black pigment, and then they add it to a liquid polymer. And polymer is basically a plastic. Any plastic bag or plastic container. This is a form of polymer which is made from petroleum or oil. And then, so once acrylic paint dries or cures, it becomes a plastic, and then you have that plastic stuck in your brush and you'll never get it out. It'll never wash out. Once it's stuck onto something, that's pretty much it. So if you get acrylic paint on your clothes, wash it right away and you'll be able to get it out because it washes with soap and water. But once it's cured on your clothing, that's it. It stays forever. Okay, so the next is do not leave brushes soaking for long periods of time in water. There's a few reasons for that. One, when you're using your paintbrush, you should never let the water get up over the ferrule because it will get in between the metal ferrule and the wood and it can rot the wood and make this loose. It can also make the hairs come out. That's one reason. Two, some cheaper models, and I'm not including the Artist Loft in that, but there are some, knockoff places that come in from China and this ferrule will actually rust. It's not supposed to, but if you happen to have a cheaper brush, the water gets in, it starts to rust, it starts to fall apart and disintegrate and can actually color the bristles and mix in with your paints, and you don't want that. Let me show you what not to do. This is one of my good brushes. As you can see, the paint is flaking off. And that's because this brush was left in my sink overnight one time, and it got underneath the paint and the paint's all come up. Now I'm very lucky because it's still solid. The water didn't get underneath the ferrule. This is a fairly expensive paintbrush. So it didn't wreck the brush, it didn't wreck the ferrule, and it didn't wreck the wood, but it totally destroyed the paint job. And this is what will happen. Water will get down into the ferrule, start rotting the wood, and this will loosen up, and then your brush is no good anymore. And this particular brush was probably a $35 brush. You don't want to start wrecking your good brushes. These are an economical brush, but you still don't want to wreck them and have to go out and get new ones. And then the other reason you don't want to be soaking these in water is that if you put them in a thing of water, it's resting on the bristles, and over time it can bend the bristle, and once it bends and dries like that, it will never come back. Like once it starts to bend, you can pull it out and you can wash it all you want, but a lot of times the damage is permanent and you won't be able to fix it. So what you should do is you should wash it with soap and water, rinse it really well. I always pull mine to a point or a chisel, and then I dry them flat. Now I'm noticing in their brush care, they're saying that you can put some dish soap on it to get it to the point, and then leave it, and it will protect the brush and keep it to a point. But then you have to wash the brush before you start painting. So it's up to you. I like to wash them completely, pull them to a point, let them dry flat, and then I can just grab them and use them as I want. If you want to follow their instructions, by all means, you just leave a little bit of soap in it. That will hold the shape of the brush, but that also means that you need to wash the brush before you start using it again, because you don't want soap to mix in with your paint. So it's completely up to you. You can either pinch them and dry them flat, nice and clean, or you can use the soap to keep the shape and then wash them beforehand. Then they were saying for storage that paintbrushes are best stored standing up like this, like in a jar like that, or in a paintbrush roll. So that's a piece of fabric. It's usually about 1.5 feet, 18 inches, and there's a whole bunch of little pockets, and you put all your brushes in it, and then you roll it up and tie it, and you store it like that. I store mine in a drawer. This is my drawer of all my small brushes. So they all dry flat, and then once they're dry at the sink, I put them in here and I store them flat. These are my big brushes, or the ones that have extra long handles. I store them diagonally, so these are all my big brushes. Ooh, see, this one wasn't cleaned properly. It's a little bit stiff. It still has some soapy goop in it. That's not good. All right. And never store your brushes in the same place as you do for brushes that have oil paint. The oil paint shouldn't touch or be near synthetic brushes. I believe because the synthetic brushes are made from oil, like they're a polymer synthetic, maybe there's something in the oil paint that will break them down. I'm not sure. I don't use oil paints myself, so I don't have to worry about that. So those are the brushes. I really like that they've also added on. There's not all of the brushes that they make are in here. There's a liner brush and a fan brush. We might talk about those later, but I like that they've given this information for beginners. That's fantastic. I'm going to keep this. So next we have palette knives. I picked up this assorted plastic palette knife set from Michael's. It was $3.99 for the set. This is important. think we're a little bit too close now. This is important for color mixing mostly. So let me put those down so that you can see the different sizes and shapes. I'm interested what they say here on the back. So this one here, the flat shaped knives are ideal for mixing and spreading paint, and that's what I do. You mix them on, I use this surface. This is a plastic surface, but you can use a paper plate or a palette paper, and that's where you would mix your colors. We're going to be doing that when we talk about color theory. These ones here, these offset ones, they say the trowel shaped knives are ideal for moving large amounts of material, spreading, smoothing, and mixing, which is true. I tend to use this one just because I can move a lot with this whole edge, and these ones are a little bit smaller, but they all have their place. And then these scraper shaped knives are ideal for applying wet paints or medium, building texture, and creating detail. I don't use them for putting paints on. I use these for taking paints off. So scraping or scratching or removing paint. Now, I have a drawer with some palettes in it. So I have all of these palettes. As you can see, they have been well used and well loved, and they're stained. I also have a plastic putty brush. I have some metal ones that I have used on occasion. And then this one is my favorite. I do very large canvases and I have to spread a lot of paint, and I use this Liquitex Freestyle Offset Spatula. However, I have always told people they can just use a cake icer. You won't find a cake icer this small at Michael's, I don't think. I don't know, but these palette knife kits are perfect. Like for $4, you're going to get years and years of use out of them. So these palette knives, that's what we're going to be using them for, is mostly color mixing. I'll show you a few techniques with them. So we'll put those in here. So next we need to talk about substrates. So substrates are whatever surface you are applying the paint to. It can be paper, it can be canvas, it can be cardboard, it can be wood, it can be a tile, it can be a wall, it can be a floor. Whatever it is you're putting the paint on is your substrate. And for this class, this course, we're going to use two. We're going to use canvas paper. Oh, I need to make that a little bit smaller. There we go. Canvas paper. So this paper has the texture of canvas so that you can practice and play learning how to do techniques on here, but without having to use an actual canvas or a canvas panel. So you can play on this and not worry about wasting expensive canvases. I believe I paid $5 or $6 for this. It's got 10 sheets and it's 9 inches by 12 inches. So for this course, if you have canvas paper that's larger, that's okay. That is good. I would prefer if you didn't have paper that was smaller than this. 9 by 12 should be the minimum size. So paper is usually marked acid free, which means that there's nothing in the paper that's going to corrupt over time. You want to make sure that your paints and any student grade paint is archival. It's perfectly good. So that means that when this and this gets together, there's nothing that's going to create an acid that's going to either deteriorate the paper or deteriorate the paint or the adhesion of the paint to the paper. So most of these all say acid free. Most papers that are used in scrapbooking or art journaling or drawing are either marked acid free or archival, depending on the company and depending on the level of the paper. You'll notice this one says 200 series good. Strathmore is the company that makes this paper, and they actually have 5 levels of paper quality. So they have a youth series. It's called Series 100. It is for children. It usually has a blue cover on it. Then there's this 200 series, which has the white covers. It's for practice paintings or practice drawing and for beginners. Then they have, they have a 300 series. So this always has the yellow covers. This is called their Better series. So this is for practiced and finished art for intermediate artists. Then they have a 400 series, which is their Best series. It usually has a brown or a tan cover, and this is for finished art and intermediate or professional artists. And then they have a 500 Premium series, which I have never seen. It has a very stark white finish. It's not sold in the store that I shop at, and it's for finished art on a professional level. So you can usually tell walking into your store which one you want. I tend to always get the 300 or the 400 series depending on what my project is. So if you can't get Strathmore canvas paper, that's okay. Just make sure you get, like, there's Canson, there's a ton of different kinds of paper companies out there. Just make sure it says canvas paper and it's textured. We're also going to look here. It says 115 pound paper. What that means is that 500 sheets of this paper is 115 pounds. Now it's not 115 of this size. It's a standard printing size. I'm not sure what that is, but 500 sheets is called a ream of paper. And when you pile up 500 sheets of whatever paper you have, it will give the weight. So this one's 115. This one is 140. So it's not 500 sheets this size, it's 500 sheets that are used in printing. I'm not sure what the size is, but 500 of these would equal 140 pounds, and this one is the same. This one's 140 pounds, but again, it's not based on this size. It's based on 500 sheets at printer size. But what that tells you is that the higher the number, the thicker the paper. This 140 is very thick. It's almost like business card thick. It might actually be a little bit thicker than some economical business cards, whereas this 115 is thinner, more pliable. So the higher the number, the thicker and heavier the paper is. So just so that you know that. So you can have Series 200. Well, I know for a fact in the Series 400 you can get 100, 120, 140. There's actually another one, I think it's 180 something, that I used for a special project. It was very, very heavy, thick paper. So it's not necessarily the series that dictates the heaviness. Within a series, within the 200 series, there can be different thicknesses. Within the 300 series, there can be different weights. And in the 400 series. That's a lot of information. If you have questions, make sure you put them down in the doobly-doo. So let's talk about the difference between canvas. This one has a hole in it. I need to fix that. And canvas panels. Canvas is a fabric, and it's stretched over wooden frame. These are called stretchers, and it'll be stretched and stapled. A canvas panel will be the same thing. It'll be canvas fabric, but it's glued onto a cardboard backing instead of stretched on canvas stretchers. And in both cases, they are primed. Most canvases are triple primed. Canvas panels tend to be double primed. And for this course, I asked my sister and my niece to go out and get 9 by 12 inch canvas panels. At Michael's, they have a 5-pack. And that's what we're going to be using for this course. But if you have a different size canvas panel that's bigger, that's perfect. If you have smaller ones, I'd prefer if you use 9 by 12 or bigger, just because if you get too small, you won't be able to do the techniques that we talk about. Canvases also come in different series, just like the paper does. Instead, they're called levels, level 1, level 2, level 3. This is a level 1 canvas. It's an economical fabric that is put on an economical frame, and it's just stapled here on the back. A level 3 is a professional canvas. They tend to be 1.5 inches wide. These ones here, they're only not even maybe a 1/2 inch, 1.5 inches wide. They have very sturdy, solid stretchers, and they usually have cross bracing somewhere, especially as the canvas gets larger. And they have a much nicer edge here. They will be folded, and they'll be stapled farther along so that you don't see them from the side. And then a number 2 is right in the middle. It's got a fairly good canvas. It's got fairly good bars. It might not be stretched farther in. I don't think I've seen a gallery level 2. Gallery canvases tend to be a level 3, but they're a step up. The canvas fabric is a little bit thicker. It will be triple primed. It will have a sturdier or straighter stock, so less chance of warping. These canvases, the level 1s, sometimes they will, especially when they get really wet, they will bend a little bit if the stretcher bars aren't really straight. So these are perfectly good for beginners. I've done some of my art that I've sold on these. We're not going to be using canvases in this course. However, maybe in a future course I will use it, but I wanted you to be able to see what the difference was between the stretched canvas and a canvas panel. So some of the other things that you will need is paper towel. You could also use baby wipes, but paper towel is nice. Old rags, but again, paper towel is nice. You're going to need a ruler, a pencil. Now you can just use a regular pencil that you use for school, which is normally an HB. If you have gone and gotten drawing pencils, like this is a Staedtler drawing pencil, they usually go from 8B all the way down to 6 or 8H. If you have the whole kit, try to only use the 2B or the HB. If you use the higher B, which means the lead is softer, you might make a mark that will be too black and too soft for the paint to cover it. If you use a high H, so more than the HB, it might actually dent your paper because it's a harder lead meant for a very straight, thin line, and if you used it, you might not be able to cover up the dent with the paint. So I encourage you to use either a 2B or an HB. You're going to need an eraser. This is a white plastic eraser. These are good. If you have a pink eraser, that's okay. It might stain the paper or the canvas panel with a bit of pink. It's okay. You'll be able to brush it off really well and then paint over it, but the white vinyl / plastic eraser I think is better. You will need some containers. You don't need big containers like this. They can be small containers. These are old Tupperware. Do not use your mother or your father's Tupperware without asking them first, because once you put paint in them, you cannot use them for food again. So maybe they have one that a lid has been lost. and you will be able to use that one. Or I use old paint jars, and then I clean them out and then I use them for other things. You will need 2 containers. They are both going to have water in them. However, one is going to be for brush cleaning dirty water, and the other one will have clean water in it used for dampening your brush during a technique. So you'll need 2 containers. My desk has a plastic no-stick covering on it, so I can just wipe up anytime I spill or make a mess. I want you to make sure that wherever you're working, you have either a tablecloth or some newspaper down. Make sure you're protecting the surface that you're working on. Don't go and put all your paints on the good dining room table without protection. You also need to have a place for your paintings to dry. So let's say you're using the dining room table and you're painting and it's dinner time and you're told you need to clean up because we're going to eat. You still need a place for that painting to dry flat once you move it. So it can either be on a piece of newspaper on your desk, or maybe on your dresser, or on a table somewhere else in the house. But until it dries, it needs to be flat. So just think about that when you're deciding where you're going to be working. I think that's it for materials. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself and about the course. I started painting in 2011. When I walked into a Michael's in Ottawa, and there was a lady there, and she said, "Do you want to learn to paint?" And I said, "Yes, I've always wanted to learn to paint." And she gave me my first art lesson at Michael's. I paid $25. I took the class. I painted a jug full of daisies. Found out later that the lady and I had gone to school together. Her name is Andrea Pumphrey. She started me on my journey. Her website is down in the dibbly-doo. Then in 2013, I was laid off from my job and decided to go back to school and take art. So I went to Algonquin College in Ottawa and I took the Introduction to Fine Art course. It was 2 semesters. I took 2 semesters of acrylic painting, 2 semesters of mixed media, and 1 semester of life drawing. I loved my class, and off I went on my art journey. And here I am. I live in Windsor, Ontario now. I have a YouTube channel. I have a fine art practice with my partner Arlene. I have my own art practice. I do lots of different kinds of art. However, I tend to be more abstract. And that's the next thing we need to talk about. I took life drawing in school. So life drawing is people and live animals, portraiture. So a portrait of your child or a portrait of your dog or your cat. I took life drawing. I did not enjoy it. I do not excel at portraiture. So we're not going to be doing any portraiture in this course. I am an abstract impressionist artist by nature, which means I don't do realistic painting in general. I can do still life, which is when you do a vase of flowers or some fruit or something like that, a still life on a table. I can do that. I do landscapes. However, I am not a photorealistic painter. I'm not a photorealistic artist at all, and we're not going to be covering that type of art here in this particular course. This course is meant for beginners just starting out. There are a ton of YouTube creators who do photorealistic painting, do portraiture. I cannot compete with them, and I have no intention of even trying to because it's not my forte. My forte is usually holding people by the hand at the beginning, giving them lots of information that they can use in plain language English, so that it makes sense to them so that they can start their artful journey. So the projects that we're going to be doing here are going to be landscape and still life, but it's not going to be photorealistic. It's going to be very impressionistic. I am going to be able to show highlighting and shadows, composition, all those good things. But my goal is to get you interested enough and competent enough to move on to other creators here, other art instructors whose specialty is that kind of artwork. I do fluid acrylic pouring. I do a lot of mixed media. I do collage. So I can start you on your journey, but I'm not going to be able to hold your hand through the entire journey if that's what you are looking to do, is photorealistic painting. But with that said, we are going to do some really interesting things. Now, I had started a list and I realized there's not going to be 12 classes. There's only going to be 8 classes. And that's because over the 26-week period for the course for my niece, we are doing week 1 we're doing a video, then week 2 she does her homework. So she watches a 1-hour video and then she spends at least an hour working on her homework. And then the week after that, we are going to be video conferencing and I'm going to be evaluating her work, talking to her about what she learned, what she liked, what she didn't like, what she struggled with, what she really enjoyed. So there's not going to be a video every second week. There's going to be a video every third week. So there's only going to be 8 videos 3 weeks apart for this course. I wanted you to know that because earlier in the video, I know I said that there would be 12 videos, but there's only going to be 8. And the general breakdown of this is going to be a materials video, which is the one we're doing right now. And then the next video is going to be about color theory. So we're going to be talking about color wheels, how colors work together, tints, shades, complementary colors. We're going to do a color wheel together. We're going to do a tonal chart with some colors and really get you comfortable with color and how paints work together. As I said earlier, there's different colors of blue, so you can take this blue and this yellow to make a green, but it's going to be different than if you took this blue and this yellow and made a green. So we need to discover what those differences are in this course. So we're going to do color theory. Then we're going to do a still life. I'm going to pick the still life, and as part of that course, we're going to do still life and highlighting and shadowing. Then we're going to do another still life. Gina is going to get to pick what the image is going to be. I'm hoping from the time that she does this one, she'll have an idea of what she wants to do. And in that still life class, we're going to talk about composition, how a painting comes together for visual appeal, so that when people look at it, they like it, that it has all of the elements that are necessary to make good composition. Then we're going to do a landscape. I'm going to pick it. Again, we're going to do some highlighting and some shadowing lessons in that. And then Gina is going to pick another landscape. Again, we're going to talk about composition, how to put it together. We're going to talk about rules around reference photos online, the laws, copyright laws, all that kind of stuff will be talked about in this. Then we're going to do some abstract painting. I believe as an abstract artist that it has a really important place in the arts community. Not everybody believes that. A lot of people think that if you can't paint something to look real, then you're not a real artist or you're not a real painter. I disagree with that. I think that abstract art lets you make the same kind of story, the same kind of feelings, the same kind of emotions as a photorealistic painting does, but it does it differently. But I also believe that you need this top part first. You need to know how to do highlighting and shadowing. You know how to work on composition, because abstract isn't about just throwing paint at a canvas and saying, there you go. There's actually a lot of thought that goes into it. So I'd really like for us to do an abstract painting together. And then there's going to be a final project. I don't know what it is yet. But the first 6 classes will take us to mid-October. So the videos will be on July 3rd, July 24th, August 14th, September 4th, September 25th, October 16th. Then the abstract one will be November 6th, and then the final project will be somewhere around November 27th. I'm not sure yet what that's going to be or what it's going to be included. I have some other thoughts. I just haven't figured them out yet. So the point of this course is basically to take someone who knows nothing about acrylic painting for sure, possibly the beginning of art, and take them on an exploratory journey to see if, one, they like it, they enjoy it, and they want to keep going. I'll start them on the path, and then after that, depending on what they like to do, if they want to do manga, I'll send them to Acrylics. If they want to do photorealistic painting, I might send them to Cinnamon Cooney. If they want to do landscapes, I might tell them to go look at Bob Ross. Like there's thousands of artistic creators here on YouTube. Once you have the basics with me, you can go anywhere you want. You can do whatever you want. You can do, it doesn't even have to be painting. Maybe this gets you just interested in shape. So you want to learn to draw, you want graphite, you want to do colored pencil, you want to use markers, you want to do anime, you want to do maybe cartooning, maybe you want to go into sculpture, maybe something about the abstract gets you really interested in, colors and art installation. I don't know. This is just the beginning of the journey. So that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about for this hour, for this class. I thank you for being here and helping Gina and I on her artful journey beginnings. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them down in the dibbly-doo. I do answer all questions. I try to be as helpful as possible. I don't believe that I have all the answers. So if there's a question I can't answer, I will send you to someone who can. And I know a lot of YouTube creators on here. I follow their channel, so I'll be able to send you on your way to someone who will be able to give you the information that you need to complete your project. So that's it. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe down here so you can follow me on my artful journey. It's always better when you're here. Bye!